5:43 in the morning. That's what the clock on my Harley-Davidson Street Glide read when I pulled out of the driveway last October. The sun wasn't up yet. The neighborhood was dead quiet. Just me, a full tank of gas, and Route 12 stretching out through the Cascades like a ribbon somebody dropped from the sky. The air hit me first, that sharp, cold pine needle smell you only get before dawn in the mountains. My engine was the only sound for miles. No cars, no trucks, no other bikes. Just that low, steady rumble underneath me and the white line disappearing under my front wheel. And somewhere around mile 30, with fog sitting in the valleys below me and the first hint of orange cracking open along the ridgeline, I had a thought that stopped me cold. I'm happier right now than I've been on a motorcycle in 20 years. No riding buddies. No group text blowing up the night before about where to meet. No matching route sheets. Just me. And here's the thing that took me way too long to admit. I used to think riding alone meant something was wrong with me. Like I'd failed at the social part of motorcycling. Like the guys who ride solo are the ones nobody wanted to ride with. Turns out, riding alone is the sanest thing I've ever done. And if you've been feeling guilty about it, this video is for you. The ride that changed everything. Let me take you back about 6 years. Fall of 2019. A buddy of mine, Rick, good guy, been riding since the 80s. He organized what he called the last real ride of the season. 15 guys, a loop through the Blue Ridge Parkway, down through Cherokee, back up through Deal's Gap, the tail of the dragon. 318 curves in 11 miles. If you've ridden it, you know. If you haven't, just imagine the best road you've ever been on, then multiply it. I was pumped. I just put new Dunlop Road Smart tires on my bike. Fresh oil change. I'd mapped the whole route on my Garmin Zumo the night before. I was ready. We met at a gas station off I-40 at 7 in the morning. 15 bikes, couple of Harley Road Kings, a few Indian Challengers, one guy on a BMW R1250 GS who wouldn't stop talking about his GPS. Rick laid out the plan. He was road captain. His brother-in-law Danny was sweep rider, bringing up the rear. Standard, staggered formation, hand signals for stops, the usual. And for the first hour, it was everything you want a group ride to be. 15 bikes rolling through the mountains in perfect formation, leaves turning gold and red, that crisp autumn air. I remember thinking, this is it. This is why we ride. Then it fell apart. It started small. A guy named Steve rode a Heritage Softail, nice bike, kept breaking formation to ride side by side with his buddy, which meant the guys behind him had to constantly adjust. Then 2 of the younger riders started pushing the pace through the curves, passing guys in the group, turning a scenic ride into their personal track day. By the time we stopped for gas in Bryson City, the vibe was already off. Rick was frustrated. Danny was lecturing the fast guys. Steve didn't think he'd done anything wrong, and 3 guys were standing around their bikes arguing about whether we should skip Deal's Gap because some people clearly can't handle the curves. We didn't skip it. We rode the tail of the dragon, and it should have been the highlight of the whole trip. 318 curves through the Smoky Mountains on a perfect fall day. But you know what I remember most? Watching my mirrors, constantly checking to make sure the guy behind me was keeping up, worrying about the guy ahead of me braking too hard, thinking about whether I was holding the right gap, listening for horns, managing the group in my head instead of actually riding the road. I rode one of the greatest motorcycle roads in America, and I barely experienced it. I was so busy being part of the group that I forgot to be part of the ride. And here's the part I didn't admit to anyone for a long time. The problem wasn't Steve. It wasn't the fast guys. It wasn't Rick's planning. The problem was me. I'd spent 20 years riding for other people. Not on purpose, not consciously, but when I really sat with it, I realized almost every ride I'd taken in 2 decades had an audience. I picked bikes that would get compliments at bike night. I learned to ride Deal's Gap so I could say I'd ridden Deal's Gap. I went to Sturgis 3 times, not because I loved it, but because riders are supposed to go to Sturgis. I even joined an Iron Butt Association ride once. 1,000 miles in 24 hours and spent most of it miserable. But I finished because I wanted the patch. I wasn't riding, I was performing. And that group ride in 2019 was the day the curtain came down. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because for the first time, I watched myself from the outside. A guy in his 50s, riding a motorcycle he bought partly because of how it looked parked next to other motorcycles, on a route he chose because it sounded impressive, worrying more about what the group thought of him than whether he was actually enjoying enjoying himself. That was the last group ride I ever went on. What nobody tells you about riding alone. Now, after that ride in 2019, I didn't immediately become a solo rider. It wasn't some overnight transformation. I just started noticing things, paying attention to how I felt after different kinds of rides, and what I found surprised me. I want to share 3 things with you that nobody in the motorcycle world talks about. And the first one starts with a study that Harley-Davidson doesn't even advertise anymore, which is a shame because it might be the most important thing ever published about riding. In 2018, Harley-Davidson partnered with UCLA's Semel Institute for Neuroscience. A researcher named Dr. Don Vaughn strapped EEG sensors onto riders' heads, the same kind of sensors they use in hospitals to measure brain activity, and had them ride motorcycles while tracking exactly what was happening inside their skulls. What they found was remarkable. Riding a motorcycle increased focused attention by 28% compared to just sitting at rest. Cortisol, which is your body's stress hormone, dropped measurably. And the sensory engagement, the way a rider's brain processes the road, the wind, the sound of the engine, the lean of the bike through a turn, activated the prefrontal cortex in a way that driving a car simply didn't. Now, here's what nobody talks about when they mention this study, and I had to dig into this to understand my own experience. Your prefrontal cortex is basically the CEO of your brain. It handles focus, decision-making, problem-solving. When you're riding a motorcycle, that part of your brain lights up because the activity demands it. You have to process speed, road surface, traffic, weather, lean angle, all at once, all the time. It's like a workout for the most important part of your mind. But here's where solo riding and group riding split apart. When you ride in a group, staggered formation, 12 bikes, managing gaps, a huge chunk of that prefrontal processing power gets redirected to tracking other riders. Where's the guy ahead of me? Is the rider behind me keeping up? Are we maintaining formation? Is someone about to do something unpredictable? Your brain is working overtime, but not on the ride, on the group. When you ride alone, all of that processing power gets freed up, and your brain does something incredible with it. It starts wandering in a productive way. You're still focused on the road, you have to be, but the background channels of your mind open up. Problems you've been stuck on for weeks start untangling themselves. Ideas surface out of nowhere. You'll be leaning through a sweeper on some back road, and suddenly you know exactly what to say to your son about that thing you've been avoiding. It's not magic, it's neuroscience. Your brain finally has room to think, and that only happens when you're alone. The next thing I want to share with you is about a Japanese philosophy that Western riders accidentally discovered. This idea of pursuing something alone, not for anyone else's approval, but for the personal perfection of the experience itself. The Japanese have had a word for this for centuries. It's called kodawari, and it changed how I think about riding. Kodawari is a Japanese philosophy. It roughly translates to an uncompromising devotion to pursuing something the right way, your way, without needing anyone else to validate it. A sushi chef who spends 40 years perfecting his rice. A woodworker who joints a beam by hand when a machine would be faster, not because anyone asked them to, not because anyone's watching, but because the act of doing it right, alone, in silence, is the whole point. In Japan, motorcycle culture absorbed this philosophy decades ago. If you've ever looked into Japanese solo touring, it's a completely different world from what we have here in the States. Riders in Japan will plan solo trips along roads like the Izu Skyline or the Hakone Turnpike, these winding mountain routes with views of Mount Fuji, and the entire purpose is solitary. You're not there to be seen. There's no group, there's no Instagram post. You ride the road, you experience it fully, and you go home. And in Japanese riding culture, that rider is deeply respected. He's not a loner, he's not antisocial. He's someone who takes the craft seriously enough to practice it in its purest form. Compare that to American motorcycle culture. Here, if you ride alone consistently, people assume something's wrong. Why don't you join a club? Don't you have riding buddies? Isn't it dangerous alone? We've built an entire culture around the group ride. Sturgis, Daytona Bike Week, Rolling Thunder, the image of 100 Harleys in formation. That's the picture of American motorcycling. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking it. But it does create this unspoken pressure that real motorcycling is a team sport. That if you're not part of a group, you're missing the point. What I realized, and what took me way too long to figure out, is that older American riders are arriving at Kotowari on their own. We're reaching the same conclusion that Japanese riding culture built from the ground up. We're just getting there in our 50s instead of our 20s.
Now, the third thing I want to talk about explains something that used to confuse me.
I'd come back from a 300-mile solo ride feeling energized, refreshed, ready to go again. But I'd come back from a 150-mile group ride feeling like I'd worked a double shift. Same bike, similar roads, half the distance, twice as tired. Why? The answer is something psychologists call decision fatigue. And once you understand it, you'll never look at group rides the same way again. Decision fatigue is a well-documented phenomenon. It's simple. Every decision you make throughout the day costs your brain energy. Small decisions, big decisions, doesn't matter. Your brain has a finite budget for making choices, and every one you make drains that budget a little more. It's why executives like Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day. It's one less decision, saving that energy for something that matters. Now think about what happens on a group ride. You're not just making riding decisions, lean angle, braking points, speed, road position. You're making dozens of social decisions every single minute. Should I speed up to close the gap? Is the road captain slowing down or just coasting? That guy behind me keeps riding my tail. Should I say something at the next stop? We've been riding for an hour and a half. Is it too soon to ask for a break? Dave looks annoyed. Did I cut him off back there? None of those decisions have anything to do with riding a motorcycle. They're people management, and they're burning through your mental energy faster than the road ever could. On a solo ride, all of that vanishes. Every decision is between you and the road. Turn left or turn right. Stop here or keep going. Take the highway or take the back road. There's no social calculus, no reading the room, no managing anyone's expectations but your own. That's why a 300-mile solo ride leaves you feeling sharp and a 150-mile group ride leaves you feeling hollow. It's not the miles, it's the cognitive load. The group ride drained your brain's decision-making budget on things that had nothing to do with why you got on the bike in the first place. And here's the thing nobody tells you. That fatigue doesn't just make you tired, it makes you a worse rider. When your brain is overloaded with social decisions, your situational awareness drops, your reaction time suffers, your risk assessment gets sloppy. Solo riding isn't just more enjoyable. For older riders, it's genuinely safer, because every ounce of your mental energy goes exactly where it should, on the road ahead of you. What solitude costs you. Now, I'd be lying to you if I told you solo riding is all sunrises and breakthroughs and coming home a better man. It's not. And I think the guys who make videos about riding alone and only talk about how great it is are either selling you something or they haven't done enough of it, because solitude has a cost. And if I'm going to sit here and tell you it changed my life, I owe you the full picture. 2 summers ago, I was riding through Montana, up near Glacier National Park on the Going to the Sun Road. Snow still sitting in patches along the ridgeline in July. I came around a long, sweeping left-hander, and the valley opened up below me. And standing right there, maybe 40 feet off the road, was a bull elk. Massive. Just standing in the meadow, staring at me like I was the one who didn't belong there. I pulled over, killed the engine, and I just sat there on my bike, looking at this animal in the middle of one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. And my first instinct, the very first thing my brain did, was to turn to my right and say, "Are you seeing this?" But there was nobody there, just an empty road and a quiet engine cooling down. And I'll be honest with you, that stung. Not a lot, not enough to ruin the moment, but enough that I noticed it. Enough that I sat with it for a while after the elk wandered off and I got back on the road. Sometimes you see something so perfect that keeping it to yourself feels less like independence and more like loss. I never posted a photo of that elk. I didn't tell anyone about it for months. And when I finally mentioned it to my wife over dinner one night, I realized I'd been carrying it around like a small, quiet ape. It was almost too good to hold alone. That's the cost nobody talks about. The moments that deserve a witness and don't get one. But that's not the only price you pay. Last spring, I was about 60 miles into a solo ride through the Ozarks. Southern Missouri, beautiful twisty roads, real motorcycle country. When my bike just died. No warning, no sputter. 1 second I was cruising through a set of S-curves along the current river, and the next second I was coasting to the shoulder with a dead engine and a whole lot of silence. Now, on a group ride, this is a 15-minute inconvenience. Somebody pulls over with you. Someone else rides ahead to find cell service. The guy with the BMW probably has a toolkit that could rebuild a transmission on the side of the road. You're covered, but I was alone. 60 miles from my truck, no cell signal. Standing on the shoulder of a state highway in the Ozark National Forest with a motorcycle that wouldn't start, and a whole lot of trees that didn't care about my situation. I sat on the guardrail for about 10 minutes, just looking at the bike, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time on a motorcycle. Helpless, not scared, not panicked, just that flat, humbling realization that I was in over my head, and no amount of solo rider self-reliance was going to fix it. I ended up walking about 4 miles down the road to a small gas station. An older guy there, turned out he was a retired Kawasaki mechanic of all things, gave me a ride back to my bike in his pickup. Turned out it was a faulty crank position sensor, not something I could have diagnosed or fixed roadside, no matter how many tools I carried. He followed me to a dealer in West Plains and wouldn't take a dime for his time, just said, "Been there myself," and drove off. Now, some guys would hear these two stories and say, "See, that's why you don't ride alone." And I get that. I understand why people feel that way, but that's not what these moments taught me. The elk in Montana didn't make me want to join a group ride. It made me call my wife that night and actually talk to her. Not about the ride, but about us. About the things I'd been too distracted to notice. That elk staring at me from a meadow cracked something open, and the fact that nobody else was there is what let it stay cracked long enough to matter. And the breakdown in the Ozarks didn't make me want a riding buddy for safety. It made me grateful for the retired Kawasaki mechanic who appeared out of nowhere. It reminded me that self-reliance doesn't mean never needing anyone. It means being honest about when you do. That's what solitude actually teaches you, if you let it. The ride that brought it all together. I want to tell you about one more ride, the one that put all of this together for me. This past September, I woke up on a Saturday with no plan. My wife was visiting her sister. The house was quiet. I looked out the window, and the sky was that deep, clean blue you only get in early fall when the humidity finally breaks. I didn't check the weather, didn't map a route, didn't text anyone. I just put on my gear, walked out to the garage, and fired up my Street Glide. By 6:15, I was on the road. I headed east, out toward the Shenandoah Valley. No destination, just east, because that's where the sun was, and it seemed like a good enough reason. The first hour was just riding, getting the daily noise out of my system. The bills I hadn't paid, the doctor's appointment I'd been putting off. It all comes up in the first 30 minutes of a solo ride, like your brain is emptying its pockets before it can settle in. But somewhere around hour 2, it stopped. All of it. And what replaced it was something I still don't have a perfect word for. The Japanese would call it kodawari. A psychologist might call it a flow state. My wife would just say I finally shut up for 5 minutes. Whatever you call it, I was in it. I was riding Skyline Drive through Shenandoah National Park. The leaves were just starting to turn. Not full color yet, more like the trees were thinking about it. Green with edges of gold, and the fog was sitting in the hollows between the ridges. So every time I crested a rise, I was above the clouds for a few seconds before dipping back down into them. And I realized something on that ride that I want you to hear, because it's the thing I wish someone had told me 20 years ago. I wasn't riding away from anything. I wasn't running from people or responsibilities or the noise of daily life. I was riding toward something, toward the version of myself that only exists when nobody's watching. The one who doesn't need to be impressive or entertaining or tough. The one who's just a guy on a motorcycle, paying attention, taking it in, being honest about what he sees and how it makes him feel. That's what all those years of group rides and bike nights and Sturgis rallies were actually building toward. Not the rides themselves, the rider, me. The version of me that finally knows what he wants from a motorcycle. And it's not applause. It's not a story to tell at the bar. It's this, a quiet road, a good engine, space to think, and the confidence to enjoy it without needing anyone to confirm that it's enough. I rode 180 miles that day, pulled into the garage, took off my helmet, and just sat on the bike for a minute in the silence. And then I did something I didn't expect. I went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and called Rick. Not to plan a ride, not to tell him about Skyline Drive. I called him to say thank you for the 20 years of group rides, for the Blue Ridge trip that drove me crazy, for all the Saturday mornings at gas station parking lots, and all the miles in staggered formation, and all the burger joints where we parked in a neat little row like we were supposed to. Because without those years, I never would have gotten here. Rick listened, didn't say much. Then he laughed and said, "Brother, I've been riding solo for 3 years. I was wondering when you'd figure it out." So here's what I want to leave you with. I'm not telling you to stop riding with your buddies. I'm not telling you group rides are wrong, or that clubs are pointless, or that anyone who rides in formation is doing it for the wrong reasons. Some of the best people I've ever known I met on group rides. But if you're an older rider, 50, 60, 70, and you've been feeling that pull toward solitude, I want you to know something. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not antisocial, you're not depressed, you're not losing your love for motorcycling. You're finding it. Now, I want to hear from you. What's the one ride you took alone that changed how you think? Maybe it was a road you didn't plan to take. Maybe it was a moment where you pulled over and just sat there. Whatever it was, tell me about it. Because I guarantee you, somebody in this comment section needs to hear your story the same way you needed to hear mine. If this one hit home for you, share it with a rider who's been struggling with this. Sometimes all it takes is knowing somebody else feels the same way. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of conversation. Not tips and tricks, not top 10 lists, just honest talk about what it's really like to ride a motorcycle through the second half of your life. Thanks for riding with me today. And remember, 5:43 in the morning, cold air, empty road, engine humming underneath you. Nobody watching, nobody waiting. Just you and the bike. And whatever the road decides to show you next. That's where the magic is.